So thank you everyone for coming today to this I Too Am Study Abroad panel on identity abroad. I'm really happy to have really awesome panelists here today who will introduce themselves in just a moment. My name is Kelsey Gillett. I'm a program coordinator in the Office of Education Abroad at SUNY Oswego. And to get right started, I will say the first question will just be to introduce yourself and tell us where you studied abroad and quickly why you chose that place to study abroad. And Raphael, you can start.
Hi everyone. My name is Raphael. I studied abroad in France, and I chose France because it was a requirement for my major, um, and specifically Paris. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. And Lyric?
Lyric, and I'm a senior, and I studied abroad in London during summer 2019. And I chose London because I wanted my first study abroad experience away, like on my own, to be somewhere that's more similar to home. So yeah.
Awesome. And Quinn?
Right. Hi, Hello, everyone. My name is Quinn, and I'm a senior, and I studied abroad in Paris, France. And I did this because it was an honors requirement for the honors program that was offered as a quarter class. So it gave me a chance to have some experience abroad.
Awesome. Okay, and last but not least, Alaces.
Hi, I'm Alaces. I'm a senior, and I also studied abroad in London in summer 2019. So I chose to go there because I have family there, and I was used to how London worked and the transit system and everything, pretty similar to New York City. So that was really easy for me to adapt to as quickly as I needed to.
Were you guys on the same program? You knew each other there?
No, I didn't know she studied abroad in London. That's why I was surprised.
No, when you said it, I got shocked, but then I remembered I did the summer 2 program, so maybe you did.
I did one, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say that would be too funny. Awesome. Okay, well, I'll start right with the first question, and that would be that within study abroad, we talk about there being 5 Fs, and the 5 Fs are kind of like 5 factors that sometimes stop someone from studying abroad. So they're friends, family, fears, funds, and fit. So we want to know if you faced any of these obstacles yourself before you left, and if you did, kind of what was the obstacle for you? And Lyric, you can start.
I'd say maybe one of the main obstacles I faced was funds, definitely, because I didn't really plan ahead of time for my study abroad. It was kind of a spur of the moment decision. So I didn't really have like savings or anything like that. And I personally took out like a loan to cover my study abroad costs. So it wasn't like too bad in terms of being out there, because like I'm from the city, so it's already expensive anyways. But just taking into consideration like the currency difference, like 15 pounds is not equivalent to $15. It's a little bit more. So just keeping that in mind. And like a lot of people in the program that I went to, they like plan hardcore for their study abroad programs, and they go to a different country in Europe every weekend. And like, if you don't plan ahead of time, you probably won't be able to do as many other European countries and stuff. So definitely funds, just make sure you save your money and kind of prepare. Don't just go in blind.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of students would say the same thing. But I like that you brought up the point of all of that weekend travel, especially in Europe. But I think it's also important, like you said, to focus on being in the city that you're in too. There's so much to do in London. Just like you said, you're from the city. I'm sure there's thousands of things you haven't done yet in the city being from there. So that's a really good point, that even if you aren't going on a weekend trip every weekend, it's still valuable and it's still a good investment. Quinn, what about you?
So before I went abroad, my main obstacle were probably funds, family, and fears. So since both my parents and I knew that I wanted to study abroad for an entire semester later in my college career, I had to convince them that this quarter class was worth the money, and fortunately I won. And part of my Christmas present, or the bulk of my Christmas present, was money towards the cost. And then I also had some saved up from work over the summer. So fortunately, I was able to make it possible kind of last minute. And I also, the fears part was that I didn't really know a lot of people that were enrolled in the class. And I'm definitely an introvert, so that was kind of difficult for me, but everyone was super nice and I made friends pretty quickly, so it worked out.
Good. I love your solutions. I think those are two solutions we talk about a lot too, like asking instead of for physical gifts, which oftentimes we don't even really like or end up returning, like ask your friends and family to invest in something that is important for your education, your career. Like that's a really good solution.
Definitely. And it made it more meaningful too.
Yeah, that's true. And probably made those people more invested in like, hey, show me those pictures and tell me about your trip.
Yeah, definitely.
Alaces, what about you?
I mean, I mentioned it in my intro. I had friends and family there already, so I wasn't too worried about those. And funds, luckily, my mom was like more than willing to help me pay for it. What scared me the most was like kind of like social fears, because I'm not the biggest extrovert, but like for example, my roommates wanted to go out every weekend, and I was kind of scared of like the difference in like societal pressure over there, in the sense that like, you know, there are different standards of beauty in the US versus in the UK. So that scared me a lot when I was going outside, especially in the summertime when I would wear what I wore and people many times gave me looks for it, like not only it being like American fashion, but it just like I felt like I didn't belong a lot of the time, even though I liked the place itself. But overall, it was still a great experience, and I wouldn't have traded it in for anything. But it was just a lot of social pressure for me in those 6 weeks.
Yeah, you definitely have to adapt to a whole new, like you said, like version of society, and 6 weeks is like really quick to do it. So I applaud you for doing so and not letting it hinder your experience, like you said, like still having a really good time. Okay, Raphael.
So speaking, just expanding on what Alyssa said, your identity in a foreign country is a really important factor when you travel abroad. You're not gonna just get there and feel like you're one of the people. You have to recognize that you're not from there and handle yourself as such. But in the long run, it's just a really enriching experience. You know, like it's so invaluable. You can't get it anywhere else. You can't get it by staying where you are. And I think you can't really put a price tag on that. And that's just something everyone has to experience for themselves and determine if they like or not. In terms of finances, I did plan extensively, and my parents help a lot also financially, but also being able to, you know, plan ahead and tell yourself, I'm going to raise this much by this deadline and, you know, make this happen for myself. So I think the determination, planning ahead, and just being motivated enough to get everything in place before deadlines reach and stuff like that. And I can't really think of the other F's, but in terms of friends and family, I mean, tech has made everything so much easier. I feel like, I mean, you know, I don't think you really have to worry about that. I FaceTime my mom every night before I went to bed. So that, yeah. So yeah, I think that's all I have. Thanks.
That's a really good point. I think you're right. Like having the ability to just turn on the phone and see those that are back at home that you love is so cool now. I mean, it's not that long ago that I was on my first study abroad experience, but 10 years like has made all the difference. And to see what students have available now to keep in touch versus my first experience in 2009 in Ecuador, it's a world of difference, and I'm so happy that it does help with that obstacle a lot. Before we move on to the next one, just because a lot of us were touching on funds, were any of you able to receive any funding from scholarships like Get Go or anything like that?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, perfect. So the next question is, what was your biggest challenge, do you think? And how did you overcome that challenge? And Quinn, you can start.
All right. So my biggest challenge was probably dealing with the disappointment in the airport that my group experienced when our initial flight to Paris was canceled due to leaking hydraulic fluid. And this understandably induced much stress, particularly in the faculty leader, as we had to scramble to get a plane that would hold 15 open seats for our entire group. And it was during spring break, so it was not very easy to do that. And while our trip was ultimately cut 2 days short, and our initial train ride to Lyon, France was cut due to these circumstances, we were still able to bond as a group over that extended time period. And I was able to get a lot of homework done since this was a Q3 class, so it was in the middle of the semester, and I definitely had a lot of work, so those days helped me enjoy it more when I was finally in France.
Yeah, that is definitely an obstacle that probably you didn't have much choice in the resolution, but that's true. Yeah, that was a big shock. But you did, that's awesome though. You guys did get over there and you still were able to, make the most of that week abroad. And so I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm glad that you were able to still enjoy your trip.
Yeah, and it also gave more room for unstructured time in Paris because we wouldn't have had that time. So it worked out in the long run, I think.
That's true. And if anything, it gave you a realistic travel experience because at some point, something always goes wrong, but you can always fix it. So that's good.
Definitely.
Okay, Alaces?
No, one of my biggest challenges was kind of getting time right with everything because my internship was the most demanding out of all of like my housemates and everything at the time. So I like barely saw them. I was one of those who was like up at 8 a.m. and I was out until like 9 p.m. just because of how many tasks my supervisors had given me. And I didn't mind it at all, but it was just like very taxing on my own energy. And then like in some weeks I felt like I didn't even get to do the actual like experience London part, even though I had previously. But it was just weird that I couldn't like do this with my friends every time they wanted to go out. I was too tired every time. Like they were like, "Oh, we're doing this today." I couldn't go with them. But other than that, like it was still okay. It was still a good experience in general.
Yeah. Doing an internship overseas, I know Lyric and Raphael can attest. It's no joke. I mean, I have not personally done it, but I know from talking to students like you guys, you are working. And so I would say my opinion of how you overcame that is that you have something really meaningful and really important to put on your resume and talk about in job interviews. So sometimes I think, people can confuse study abroad with an extended spring break trip that's all fun and games. But at the end of the day, you're working on bettering yourself academically and for your career. And I would say you probably definitely did that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough because some of the days like I would have to go on site to do things that were like a 4-hour train ride away. And granted, I'm really used to just like long traveling because I'm from the city and I also come up here for school. So I was used to it, but it was also like, I could be at home with my friends, but I'm not.
Yeah. Well, good job for doing it. And it's going to be worth it when graduation comes and that is on your resume. I'm sure that you will soon see if you haven't already. And Raphael.